The Phoenix Suns have been busy, and I was like, sheesh, man, I hope they don't trade for Jonathan Kuminga last week, where I'm taking a week off from the Garcia show, rejuicing, resetting a little bit. But then it started to come out hot and heavy that the Phoenix Suns are interested in Jonathan Kuminga. And here's what I'll say about it. It's very interesting to me, the amount of Suns fans who are very intrigued by bringing Jonathan Kuminga to the Phoenix Suns. And I'm just not there. I don't think Jonathan Kuminga is a bad player at all. In fact, I think he could help the Suns in a few different avenues. I think he could help pressure the rim. That was an issue that the Suns had last year. I think to some extent he can play make and create his own shot. However, as much as I think Jonathan Kuminga would be fun and be a cool addition to the Suns, and it would add a little bit more pizzazz to the season, let's be honest. We're pretty much going after Jonathan Kuminga as Suns fans, Brian Gregory, Matt Ishbia. There is no schematic X's and O's lens that you could look at this through and say, this makes sense. The Suns, if the Suns were to acquire Jonathan Kuminga, where does he start? Where does he go? I don't understand. Is he going to be the 3 or the 4 on this team? Do you really want to sit Dillon Brooks on the bench and start Jonathan Kuminga at the 3? You're talking about a lineup with no shooting at all. It's Devin Booker, Jalen Green, Jonathan Kuminga, Ryan Dunn, Mark Williams. Sure, you're going to be pressuring the rim. You're going to be able to dribble, drive, and kick it out to someone on the perimeter, but you have no one that can consistently hit an open three-point bucket. You got a couple of guys who can create their own shot, but you're not talking about a bunch of guys who are going to be able to create for others. It doesn't make a ton of sense at all. In fact, I don't get the avenue that some Suns fans are really going down with this. It's not me saying I don't want Jonathan Kuminga. It's not all bad. As I've mentioned before, he could pepper the inside of the cup. He will be able to dribble drive. He will suck defenders into the paint and kick it out to open guys. But outside of Devin Booker, who isn't a great three-point shooter either, there's no one that the defense will feel like they have to get out on, and so they'll all crash to the interior and make the Suns hit wide open buckets. Okay, fine. You want to keep Dillon Brooks in, and then you want to start Jonathan Kuminga at the 4. So then Ryan Dunn goes to the bench, and you're talking about a starting lineup that has the same issues as it did last season. It was far too small. Or you didn't have anyone who could defend the other team's best player. Dillon Brooks is a solid defender, but he's more so a willing defender. And with Ryan Dunn next to him, it's going to make things very easy, or much easier. It's going to make things much easier to swap guys off of the pick and roll, communicate better defensively. Ryan Dunn can take the opposing team's best player, and Dillon Brooks, who is much more suited to take the second best player on the opposing team, that would make sense. But Kuminga shoots sub 30% from 3. I don't know if I want to send my last remaining assets, that being Oso Ighodaro, Grayson Allen's contract, and a couple of second-round picks for Jonathan Kuminga. If that's all that the Suns feel like that they could get for those two guys, sure, I would do a deal because it's a low risk, high reward. You're probably getting Jonathan Kuminga in the $25 million a year range. I get it. But then that means down the line, you're probably passing up on other players that you might be able to get for Oso Ighodaro. This is not a I hate Jonathan Kuminga rant. That's not the point that I'm trying to make. All I'm saying is Jonathan Kuminga, although a talented player, and I do think would fit somewhere in the NBA, and at his best is a 4 or 5th best player on a championship level team, fits better elsewhere, like the Sacramento Kings, than he would in Phoenix. And I don't know if I'm willing to give up my last remaining assets, that being Oso Ighodaro, for him. When later down the line, maybe someone who's a little bit better of a three-point shooter and more of a true power forward becomes available, that I could shift Oso Ighodaro to and package some of my leftover picks for that player. Kuminga feels like we're getting too far ahead of ourselves. It feels like we're spoiled as Suns fans who have had these riches and embarrassment of riches of signing after signing and wheeling and dealing and bringing in players and sending players out. It's usually not that easy. And at some point, the bill does become due. And so the Suns have to come to a crossroads. Do they want to spend their last remaining assets in Oso Ighodaro, who I'm more than willing to part ways with, on a guy who doesn't fit very well on the Suns? He does bring athleticism. He allows the Suns to play with more pace. He gets to the cup very effectively, or I guess I should say he gets to the cup more easily than some of the other players on the Suns team. But then you're talking about too much of the same thing offensively. And then it becomes redundancy. And then you have an offense like last year where it was Booker, Beal, and Kevin Durant, where all three guys kind of did the same exact thing, but in a worse version of themselves. Jonathan Kuminga and Jalen Green are more or less the same player. Kuminga is just a lesser than version. And I already have Jalen Green. And when you're talking about what I want to do for Jordan Knott in his first year as the head coach, I don't know if I want to give him someone that Steve Kerr himself, a Hall of Fame level head coach and one of the best head coaches in my lifetime, I don't know if I want to give Jordan Knott a player that Steve Kerr himself couldn't figure out and then say to each other, Jordan Knott, you put him on the floor and figure out how to make this work. It just feels like too much, guys. My guy Steve in the chat saying, I'm not giving up Oso Ighodaro for Kuminga. That, I think, is a little nuts, like on its own. The only reason why I'm saying Oso Ighodaro is someone maybe I would wait later on to trade for Jonathan Kuminga. Oso Ighodaro is a very uninspiring offensive basketball player. If he gets to the line more like he did in Summer League and he pressures the rim like he did more in Summer League, continues to pass the ball pretty effectively and just be an overall high IQ basketball player, I get why. However, he's a pretty limited offensive basketball player. And it's not like he's some defensive anchor. So I don't want to make this a thing where I'm unwilling to part with Oso Ighodaro. That's nuts. Oso is a highly subpar offensive player and a defensive player that just doesn't stick out like a sore thumb and is not going to get exposed defensively. So that kind of stuff is like I totally would move off of Oso. I just don't know if I would do it for Jonathan Kuminga because the Suns just don't have that many assets. And maybe down the line, you could move Oso for someone that fits a little bit better on this team. So I'm not against Jonathan Kuminga. I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense for the Suns right now. I think it makes them smaller, where I think he would start at the 4 position. And then defensively, you're talking about the Suns kind of getting pushed around. And I can't do that again for a second straight year. And then what are you going to do? Bring Jonathan Kuminga off the bench? I don't think it's a good idea either. So I think that the Suns should just be done. They've done a really good job with the team they have now, constructing a roster that will work for the future. I think at this point, they're doing a little too much, being in too many trade conversations. I get it. You want to check out the price. I appreciate them doing that. I applaud that. But look at the team you have now. Get out while you're ahead and don't. I would just say this feels like a heat check trade. You've nailed every single trade, and now you're going from way downtown trying to hit one down that I mean, honestly, guys, is just doesn't make a lot of sense for this team. Heat check yourself. Let's be done with it. Let's move on. And when someone becomes available that fits this team a little bit better, maybe a skilled defensive player, a skilled 3-and-D player, then I would be more willing to move on from players so that those guys could fit this team better than what Oso Ighodaro could.